Do you believe that all Somalis are engaged in fraud?
I do not, and I'd like
Okay, just yes or no. Next.
Of course not.
Oh, absolutely not. We have good Somali people in our state.
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to make sure I level set because it seems like we want to continue to, especially as we just heard those particular articles entered into the record, we want to continue to just make it seem as if you are Somali, then somehow you are a fraudster. Are you aware of allegations that $50,000 in taxpayer dollars have been given to someone that is currently sitting in this administration by the name of Tom Homan? Are you aware? Okay, that's a yes.
I am.
Okay. And last I checked, and correct me if I'm wrong if you have different information, but he was given that $50,000 in exchange for being able to provide contracts and kickbacks to people as soon as Trump was going to get into office. The DOJ was actually investigating this, but as soon as Trump got into office, last I checked, he actually said, go ahead and throw away that case.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Jasmine Crockett from Texas.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and for every witness that is here, thank you so much for your time and your attention. I just have one quick question. I have not been here the entire hearing, but I don't think this question has been posed for each of you, and we can start at the far end. Do you believe that all Somalis are engaged in fraud?
I do not, and I'd like
Okay, just yes or no. Next.
Of course not.
Oh, absolutely not. We have good Somali people in our state.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to make sure I level set because it seems like we want to continue to, especially as we just heard those particular articles entered into the record, we want to continue to just make it seem as if you are Somali, then somehow you are a fraudster. And this administration has decided that it wants a target on their backs. And so when my colleague, Ms. Randall, decided that she wanted to talk about the threats that are being made towards various Somali people, the reason she brought it up is because this particular side of the aisle has a tendency of if one person does something bad, especially if they are an immigrant, then we are going to cast aside that entire community. So I wanted to level set, and I appreciate your honesty because that's something that we very rarely get from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. In fact, if we want to talk about fraud, I got a lot of fraud that we're going to talk about because we're going to get into this, but I am very curious to hear. Let me ask you, Mr. Ballou, are you aware of allegations that $50,000 in taxpayer dollars have been given to someone that is currently sitting in this administration by the name of Tom Homan? Are you aware? Okay, that's a yes.
I am.
Okay. And last I checked, and correct me if I'm wrong if you have different information, but he was given that $50,000 in exchange for being able to provide contracts and kickbacks to people as soon as Trump was going to get into office. The DOJ was actually investigating this, but as soon as Trump got into office, last I checked, he actually said, go ahead and throw away that case.
So it was a Department of Justice investigation, and he accepted the money from an undercover FBI agent in cash.
Are you aware as to whether or not we ever got that $50,000 back?
I'm not.
Oh, okay. Are you aware as to whether or not this committee has decided to investigate that?
I'm not.
Are you aware as to whether or not any committee in Congress has decided to investigate the fact that we know that he took $50,000 from an undercover officer, and yet we still don't have that money, nor does he have any charges?
I'm not.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's get into it. We're living through the most corrupt presidential administration in American history, a $300 million ballroom, a $230 million payout from the Department of Justice because the president got his feelings hurt because he had to be investigated for being a criminal. Hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars spent at Trump-owned properties around the country, Trump-branded wine being sold at the Coast Guard exchanges, American taxpayer dollars being spent on DHS propaganda ads on Truth Social, awarding federal contracts to corporations in exchange for campaign contributions. Kash Patel flew his girlfriend around the country on a multi-million-dollar jet that taxpayers paid for. Kristi Noem gave companies she's affiliated with hundreds of millions of tax dollars, then went out and spent another $200 million on 2 private jets for her travel. For 12 months, this administration has been taking billions of taxpayer dollars from American people and have been giving it away to their own companies in the form of tax cuts, government contracts, or other government funded subsidies. So Congress has a role in getting rid of fraud, I will admit that, in any federally funded government program. However, I think the fraud that the American people are concerned about is that the Republicans are taking away Americans' health care so that ultra billionaires can get more tax cuts. The real fraud is the dehumanization and demonization of the working class Americans and immigrants to distract folks away from corporate socialism that's happening because of the Republicans. So this is truly the definition of throwing away the baby with the bathwater. The Republican philosophy is that if the cost of living for the average American increases, they're on their own. But if the cost of doing business increases for the wealthiest people on earth, well, then it's the government job to bail them out. But I want to get to my last question because, Mr. Ballou, I got to give you a chance. He's been issuing pardons for numerous people who have defrauded the American people. And Republicans on this committee, yeah, just as quiet as the room just got, right? So, Mr. Ballou, talk to me about how the Trump administration has welcomed fraud across government by purging DOJ attorneys and shuttering ethics office across the federal government.
Well, you know, one of the things that's been a common theme in this discussion so far is potential government employee involvement in some of these schemes. That hasn't been proven yet, but it does seem to be alleged. The concern that I have is the office that would prosecute that in the Department of Justice, the Public Integrity Section, has been largely defunded and decimated.
Thank you so much. And my time has expired, but I do have some UCs, Mr. Chairman.
You want to do them now?
I do.
Okay.
The first one is from Truth Out. Trump grants clemency to executive who led $205 million Medicare fraud scheme.
Without objection, it's ordered.
The next one is Trump commutes sentence of Dr. Solomon Melgen, eye doctor, found guilty of Medicare fraud.
Without objection, it's ordered.
The next one, healthcare fraudster Philip Esfermaze is latest Trump clemency recipient to be arrested. He defrauded more than $1 billion from Medicare.
Without objection, it's ordered.
Trump pardons nursing home owner and supporter convicted of $7 million in tax evasion.
Without objection, it's ordered.
Trump
and we'll
pardons-
want all that stuff to put in the record. So,
I
okay.
will. I
All
got
right.
you. Trump pardons cost victims and taxpayers $1.3 billion, House Judiciary Committee Democrats review says.
All right. Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Big.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Chair
Mr.
recognizes Ms.
Chairman?
Mace. Chair recognizes
I have a request to be recognized to make a motion.
I'm sorry?
I have a request to be recognized to make a motion.
Yes, go ahead.
I move that the committee issue a subpoena to the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services for all records related to the immigration and naturalization of or any immigration benefit received by Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, Ahmed Abdi Salan Irsi, also known as Ahmed Aden, Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi, and any members of Ilhan Omar's family.
Okay, another motion is made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing. The committee will now proceed with today's hearing. Thank you, Ms. Mace. Chair recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A report that came out yesterday indicates that on average, almost $1 million a day in cash is being sent from Minnesota out of the country by a small group of Somali carriers. Are any of you familiar with that on the panel?
I'm not familiar with that particular story, but that story has been in Minnesota for a long time, where millions of dollars has gone out of MSTP, our airport, in cash to Somalia.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that this be admitted as part of the
Without
record.
objection, so ordered.
Thank you. The Biden administration required states to pay health care and daycare providers before verifying any attendance at a daycare and before care was delivered.
That's fine.
Would you say that policy facilitated the funneling of funds or defrauding of government funds? We'll start with, we'll go down the panel. We'll start with Representative Robbins, please.
My understanding is that there weren't ever enough internal controls, but under Medicaid rules, the Walz administration already had the opportunity to stop payment when there were credible allegations of fraud. They had the opportunity to do prepayment review. They could do all of those things, and they did not use those tools.
Ms. Hudson.
Not only does paying people before they deliver a service introduce an obvious opportunity for people to abscond with public dollars. But we've heard these arguments in our communities back in Minnesota from Minnesota Democrats that it's just so important that we pay people up front because they can't afford to wait for the reimbursements.
Yeah, Ms. Rarick.
Yeah, this is absolutely counter to good accounting and good accountability. So I would definitely say that you should be providing the service and getting paid after.
Mr. Baloo, what do you think?
I can't speak to that policy only because I'm learning about it just now, but I will say, you know, my
Well, so then the question then is, do you think it's a good idea to pay for the service up front before it's delivered and without accounting?
You know, I can only speak to the criminal side of things, not the administrative side, but my concern here, again, is to the extent that there would be violations because of that change, the office responsible for prosecuting those
Yeah, okay,
crimes
so
would be
that's,
largely-
so you didn't want to answer the question, you want to filibuster. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Now, here where we're going to go is, one of the things that you mentioned, Representative Robbins, is physical facilities and real estate. And as we've seen and looked at this, as I've looked at this, all of the public reporting that's out there, looked at a little bit of Exhibit A, that's like 2,800 pages or 2,300, whatever it is. Didn't get to look at all of it, but looked at some of it. I want to know, did anybody go in and find out who's owning all these properties? Because you have basically vacant properties ostensibly holding themselves out to be daycare centers. Who owns those properties? Anybody look into that?
So some of our staff is looking at it currently, and I would encourage people to think about this as you look at your other states. So we have people who own the properties and then other people related to them or close to them that provide the services, and they both get remuneration. And then we have people who homestead assisted living facilities, small single-family homes, and say it's a business, but then they shouldn't be allowed to homestead. We have instances where there are multiple assisted living facilities that have been homesteaded. So the ownership of the properties and the ownership of the business is very important. This has gotten to be such a problem in Minnesota that people invest in the daycare business as an investment. And so getting not only who runs the facility, but who the ownership is critical, because that's where a lot of the money goes.
That's my point, is that you're setting up a series and facilitating straw man purchases of actual real property to actually launder or hide money coming from the state and defraud the state. And I would encourage both the feds and the state to really take a close look at that.